Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I want to talk to you a little bit about 8 major symptoms of a trauma bond. So as we discussed in the previous part of this series, and if you haven't watched, I highly suggest you go back and watch that video first, all about what a trauma bond is, how it happens, the subconscious ingredients that contribute to it, and I will put a link for that in the description below. But let's talk about the actual symptoms in this video. So as I mentioned, a trauma bond is essentially an intense emotional bond with a toxic person in an unhealthy dynamic. And it often comes about because of earlier programmed experiences that we have that are unhealthy related to what love is, that then produces a subconscious comfort zone that then we feel this pull towards in other people, or we make acceptable in our adult relationships, though it may be unhealthy. So in just a second, we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about the 8 major symptoms. We sort of have like a bonus one. I kind of added a 9th, so maybe 9 major symptoms. It's like 8 major and 1 minor. So we'll dive in and talk about that. And before I talk about all that with you, I just want to let you guys know we are still doing our With You discount code, and we are only until the end of the year allowing people to enter in with this discount code with our community editions at the same price. So we are having our attachment coaches hold mastermind groups every single week, hopefully one so that we actually have an event every single day. Some over video where there's just shares. We're doing morning and evening routines. And then of course I do 4 live calls every single week with people in webinar format. So we have a tremendous amount. And really the point of this is that I was like, how do we help support people more because of just the isolation that's about to happen. So we're adding all of these really exciting additions at the same cost with the same discount code, all this stuff. Just to create more community, more connection, and to hopefully help compensate for some of the things that are happening in the world for those of you that might need that connection with like-minded people, all that stuff. So coupon code for the discount is in the description box below. And then I will put a card on the video as well. So 8 major symptoms of a trauma bond. Symptom number 1, an extremely unhealthy dynamic. Okay, so this means a roller coaster, lots of fighting, things like screaming, manipulation, or of course, any obvious signs of abuse. Okay, number 2, justification. Feeling such a powerful connection that it blinds you to the person's behavior. And sometimes this justification is like, it's my fault that they acted that way, or it's because they went through stuff. And we make these justifications for like why the behavior is acceptable when really, at a conscious level, it's not. But you feel such a powerful subconscious draw that that's what ends up taking precedence. Symptom number 3, fantasy. So a lot of time spent being like, I will help them change. They will heal, when there isn't any actual evidence of that starting to take place or actively taking place. So, like if somebody's in an unhealthy dynamic and you feel like it's toxic, maybe it's not abusive, but it's, there's some pretty questionable things. And then you don't see the person entering into therapy. You don't see the person doing something that's clearly a symptom of them working on themselves. You don't see them like actively taking action towards something better. And yet you keep being like, oh, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And so you're sort of dating somebody's potential, or often as well in the fantasy, it's like you might think that you're in the role of savior. Like, I'm going to love them until they're better. I'm going to get them through this with my love. And while that's a beautiful idea, it becomes very, very unhealthy when it's at the expense of your relationship to yourself. Okay. And so this is really important to recognize. And things like, oh, they don't mean to hurt me. Things like this, where we don't see the reality completely. Okay. Where we like justify out. It's like we omit the parts. We have like a selective perception on what we want to see. And we're not looking at the whole picture of what's really happening or taking place. And part of this brings us to number 4, which is because of the absence of the ability of the person on the receiving end of the very unhealthy dynamic, though there can be 2 parts in many trauma bonds, but sometimes there really is like a prey and predator thing happening. And the person who's on the victim, who's being victimized, who's on the victim end of the situation, part of this is largely because this person is disconnected from their own ability to empathize with themselves. And so there's some form of being dissociated from your own feelings, needs, or being able to see how you are actually impacted by this person. And so there's this absence of you being able to take yourself into consideration and actually feel the damage of what's happening and acknowledge that. And then this brings us to number 5, which is the boundarylessness that tends to accompany that. If we can't feel our own feelings, if we can't identify our own needs and recognize like what's okay with us and what's not, what's healthy and unhealthy for us, what's acceptable and not acceptable, then of course it becomes really challenging in a dynamic to set boundaries, right? Because like we can't identify boundaries if we don't know what our needs are, what we're feeling, what our non-negotiables are. So this is another symptom. And these things are like key things that have to be at play basically for a trauma bond to exist. Otherwise, there could be somebody who does something unhealthy, but then the person's like, that was crazily unhealthy and I'm out of here, I'm leaving. Okay. And this brings us to number 6, which is the addictive component. Okay. So there tends to be some kind of obsessiveness in a trauma bond. Like I can't get enough. I need to go back to this person. Limerence, feelings like I can't leave. And what this actually is your conscious mind being like, this isn't good, and your subconscious mind using the relationship to meet really deeply unmet needs, or to derive its sense of wholeness through the person, like we talked a little bit about in the previous part of this series. And so this is a huge symptom of the trauma bond, because what the person who's on the prey end of the trauma bond will often feel is, I need to leave. I know I need to leave. Why am I not leaving? This isn't healthy. This isn't good. And yet it's like they just feel disempowered to. And this really isn't much different than like the experience of somebody going through an addiction. Of course, there's many major differences, but there's one underlying principle that's really congruent, which is the fact that your conscious mind knows one thing, this isn't good, I need to stop this, but your subconscious mind seems to be running the show and really driving fast in the opposite direction of what you logically know better. So this is really important to recognize, okay? Number 7, walking on eggshells. Okay, so changing your behavior dramatically to really manage somebody else's feelings or to avoid conflict. A huge symptom of a trauma bond. And I don't mean like being respectful. I don't mean like, you know that somebody's wounded around something, so you like make an effort to be kind or courteous or respectful about something, and like, compromise a little bit and go out of your way to be kind. Like, I don't mean that. I mean like how you spend your time, your behaviors, where you're at, what you're doing. Like, I mean like you're altering your world just to avoid conflict or pain. And this brings us to number 8, which is hiding or lying about the behavior of your partner to somebody else. This is a big symptom of a very unhealthy relationship, when you feel the need to obscure honest truths from friends and family around you. And then I would say sort of number 9 here, which is kind of our bonus or sort of piece that we were talking about in the last series, is I haven't seen somebody, and like, this is where I want to be really clear about how I'm saying this. I haven't seen somebody yet in a very toxic relationship that doesn't have some kind of subconscious comfort zone in how they treat the relationship to themselves. And we kind of touched on this at a very high level in passing in the last video, but I want to be really clear, like I am not victim blaming at all. I'm not saying anything like that, but I've worked with many people who've been in really toxic and unhealthy dynamics, and I haven't seen one single exception to this rule. And this isn't the reason that somebody is in a trauma bond. It's not the reason that somebody's victimizing you at all. It's not like you're the reason that that's happening. But what this is, and why I feel that it's necessary to discuss this in this video, is it's a contributing factor as to why it doesn't feel crazy as it, oh my gosh, this is so unhealthy, this is so toxic, I should be out of here immediately. For you to not feel like this is, if somebody's doing something really unhealthy, for you to not naturally be like, this is really unhealthy, and to leave immediately, there has to be some part of you that it feels familiar. So for example, and it's kind of a form of re-traumatization in relationship to self, but let's say, for example, Molly is in a relationship with Bob, and Bob is really verbally abusive. He's like always putting her down, always saying mean things. For, if it was a truly secure person who had secure attachments and was in a secure place, they would be like, that is absolutely unacceptable. They would say something immediately. And then if it ever happens again, an off the cuff comment or whatever, before it's even like snowballed into a big thing where the person's verbally abusive in the relationship, if somebody said a rude comment once, it would be like, that is not acceptable. If it happened again, it would be like, that's it, out of the relationship. These are not okay things. These are huge red flags. And when somebody's in a dynamic where they're not realizing the magnitude of how unfairly they're being treated, it's usually because on some level they're talking to themselves that way in their internal dialogue. If Bob's putting Molly down, Molly's probably really self-critical and putting herself down all the time, which makes the alarm bells fail to go off fully. And so I think this is a really important thing to be aware of, because this means that part of our healing, and you're going to see this in the next part of this series, the next part of our healing is literally to be able to recognize, holy smokes, there's some reprogramming that needs to happen within me so that my alarm bells are going off and I'm absolutely not making this okay. So stay tuned for that part of the video. I hope this was helpful. This is a really important topic. Let me know if you have any further videos you want to see in the questions and comments below. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.